This large white house on Washington's Lummi Island is an oasis of pampered treatment for guests who visit Loganita by the sea. Good evening and welcome to Red's Classic Theater. Ann and Glenn Gossage are the owners of this home with a long and interesting history. But this week on Red's Classic Theater, we're going to explore the comforts inside and the beautiful surroundings. We'll get to that a little later. Our movie this week is the 1949 RKO Goldwyn production, My Foolish Heart, starring Dana Andrews and Susan Hayward. 20th Century Fox had already outbid other studios for Hayward's services, so Sam Goldwyn had to borrow her to star as his tragic leading lady. But Hayward was more than willing to play the role. She felt it was a part that had Academy Award written all over it. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way, although she was nominated for an Oscar for her performance. Here's Susan Hayward in Act One of My Foolish Heart. We're on Lummi Island in Washington this week, visiting Loganita by the sea. And the term bed and breakfast hardly does justice to this magnificent turn-of-the-century home. For the past 17 years, Ann and Glenn Gossage have made this their family home. But now with the children grown and gone, they've opened the doors of their home to a second family of pampered guests. What's Loganita all about? Well, it's for people who enjoy art, music, people, food, wine, flowers, and the outdoors, just as Ann and Glenn do. And this is the great room at Loganita, divided into two large living rooms by these massive stone fireplaces. One of the fireplaces is still cracked from a day long ago when lightning struck the chimney. A highlight of Loganita is the beautiful furniture, authentic Northwest art, and Persian rugs from Ann and Glenn's own private collection. We'll be back with more in a moment. The Gossages maintain a second home in Bellingham, but choose to live almost exclusively here at Loganita. And with a commanding view of the Strait of Georgia, the San Juan Islands, and the mountains of mainland BC, is it any wonder? Naturally, Loganita is very popular, so if you'd like to visit, be sure to reserve well in advance. Call 206-758-2651. That's 206-758-2651 for information and reservations. And now let's return to My Foolish Heart, starring Dana Andrews and Susan Hayward. Hope you're enjoying My Foolish Heart on Red's Classic Theater. We're at Loganita by the sea on Lummi Island near Bellingham. Before signing with 20th Century Fox, Susan Hayward had considered operating as a freelancer. Well, with so many offers in front of her, she sought expert advice to help her make a decision. She paid a visit to an astrologer who warned her to sign with a major studio or risk a failed career. He even told her the exact day and time to sign her Fox contract. A few mornings later, Susan Hayward was aroused by her alarm clock at precisely 3:23 a.m. in the morning, and she signed away 7 years of her life to the Fox studios. But the contract was a good one. The studio could not cut her hair without her permission, and she could quit filming at 6 p.m. on the dot. In addition, Hayward had her choice of hairdressers, makeup people, and even cameramen. This was in addition to a starting salary of $200,000 per year. Now, this was a top salary for a top star. Susan Hayward had not arrived at that point yet, but this movie helped her in her career. Now let's return to My Foolish Heart, starring Susan Hayward. From beautiful Loganita on Lummi Island, it's time to look at our mailbag. Recent requests? Well, Patricia Duval from Vancouver would like to see The Story of Three Loves with Pierre Angeli and Kirk Douglas. Kathleen Garnett from Coquitlam would like to see Les Miserables, starring Michael Rennie and Robert Newton. And Jay Ramsey from West Vancouver requested Humoresque, starring John Garfield and Joan Crawford. And if you have an idea of a location or the suggestion for a movie, please write to Red Robinson Television 12 in Vancouver. That's Red Robinson Television 12 in Vancouver. And next week, one of the most successful Westerns ever made, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, starring Paul Newman, Robert Redford, and Catherine Ross. And 2 weeks from tonight, join us for Hitchcock's Lifeboat, starring Tallulah Bankhead, William Bendix, and Walter Slezak. And now back to Susan Hayward and Dana Andrews in My Foolish Heart on Red's Classic Theater. We're featuring My Foolish Heart, starring Susan Hayward this week on Red's Classic Theater as we visit Loganita by the sea near Bellingham. Beginning in 1937 as one of hundreds of contenders for the lead role in Gone with the Wind, Susan Hayward's movie career was beset with difficulties both on and off the screen. While filming The Lusty Men, she got even with Robert Mitchum for his endless practical jokes by eating garlic just before playing an intimate love scene with him. Clark Gable was attracted to her when the two appeared in Soldier of Fortune, but he admired her only from afar, recalling that Hayward had the hottest temper in Hollywood. On a personal level, life dealt Susan Hayward some very tragic cards. In 1954, her 10-year marriage to actor Jess Barker collapsed, and Hayward was forced into a bitter courtroom case over custody of their twin sons. The outcome caused her to attempt suicide. And then in 1975, after a 2-year battle with a brain tumor, Susan Hayward died. And now, My Foolish Heart continues, starring Susan Hayward. From beautiful Loganita on Lummi Island, it's time for our weekly movie trivia quiz. Susan Hayward was nominated for the Academy Award on 5 different occasions, but only won it once. Can you name the movie? We'll be back with the answer in just a moment. Here's the answer to our movie trivia quiz. Although nominated for an Academy Award on 5 different occasions, Susan Hayward won it only once for her performance in I Want to Live, a 1958 movie. She played the role of a prostitute framed for a murder and sent to death row to await the gas chamber. And now back to Susan Hayward in My Foolish Heart. From beautiful Loganita on Lummi Island, it's a wrap for this week's edition of Red's Classic Theater. I hope you enjoyed My Foolish Heart, starring Dana Andrews and Susan Hayward. Be sure to join us next Sunday on Red's Classic Theater for one of the great westerns of all time, the 1969 production Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, starring Paul Newman and Robert Redford. In the meantime, if you have a movie selection or an idea for a location, write to Red Robinson Television 12 in Vancouver. We'd like to thank Ann and Glenn Gossage for their hospitality here at Loganita on Lummi Island. By the way, discover Loganita for yourself. Dial 206-758-2651 and make a reservation. And join us next Sunday night for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Until then, thank you for being with us. Good night, everybody.